Welcome. My name is Gail Ransom, and I am one of the 3 people on our team that brings you these global kinship webinars every month. That's along with Bob Eisenberger, who does mostly the tech, and Penny Andrews, who does inspiration and wisdom, and I do the mailing, so I send those off to you. So I've had something I've been reading, but I thought I would read to you today from what I wrote at the for our gathering, which is coming up at the end of May. If you haven't noticed those mailings, they should be coming to you because it's the same mailing list. So I hope that you see them and decide to spend that time with us. The last one was about thoughts that the leaders had to say. And what I said there comes so much out of what we do here. I'm going to share it with you. When I was growing up, being human felt earthbound. We experienced ourselves as material creatures, toes in the mud, shoulder to the wheel, hand to the plow. But we were also developing our invisible energies, love, imagination, creativity, consciousness, and so much more, without really noticing it. It is these qualities that are now rising as the invisible webwork that shapes and supports the evolution of the universe. In the beginning, when we began to talk about the noosphere, I thought it was an individual pursuit. I thought that each one of us had to do this work and somehow make it up to the network. But over and over, it's communities that are networking in the invisible realms, creating a critical mass of life consciousness, as well as the good of their own projects. Here on Global Kinship, we are discovering an increasing amount of these communities, like the one that Lauren Van Ham is talking about today. I want to encourage you to look beyond what they are doing to what spirit they are exuding while they are doing it. What energies are they spinning out into the spheres? While we were once earthbound, we are now communal consorts to the cosmos, no less, co-creating a shared future. Give the meeting over to Bob Eisenberger, who will give us some instructions.
All right. Afternoon, everyone. Good evening, whatever time you are. We're very simple here. We simply ask, as in most cases, that you keep yourselves muted until we get to time for Q&A, and then you can unmute yourself as we call on you. And when it is that time, I would direct if you have a question, I would direct your attention to the reactions button on your Zoom toolbar. And there you'll find the words raise hand. And that will raise the hand on your screen and put you in queue, and we'll be able to call on you in sequence. And that's all we need to ask from you there. Penny.
Well, I'm very excited to have our guest today, Lauren. She and I have crossed paths for 2 decades now, and her work continues to inspire. So our opening centering is in her honor, as she has committed her life to serving Earth and bringing the spirit that humanity can bring to her endeavors. This is one you may remember from another time. It's the work of Fred Lamott, and it begins. Our mother, who art in Gaia, brown as loam, nameless as rain, may your presence be a golden void, the absence of the search. Let your family dwell here as a circle, not a kingdom, where spirit and body, heaven and earth, mingle in small sacraments of compost and compassion. Be the breath we take, the bread we make each day with our own wrinkled hands. Let our prayer word be enough. For you are the weaver of galaxies into nests of young planets, and you sing the whole sky in a robin's egg. In you, we are always home. Dissolve the veil of judgment, dispel our illusion of impurity, so that we may immerse one another in your bodily fluids of abounding goodness. For thine is the roundness and the brokenness and the healing. Amen. Well, our guest has traveled far to be here today in terms of her life journey. She started in the Midwest and then traveled to New York, and she holds degrees from Carnegie Mellon, Naropa, the Chaplaincy Institute. She pursued her childhood dream of living in New York and worked off Broadway. Then she moved to the Bay Area for graduate studies in psychology, creation spirituality, and interfaith worldviews. Lauren has worked as an interfaith hospital chaplain, served as the executive director of Green Sangha, and in 2007, recognizing that caring for the earth had become her deep love, Lauren, with her necessary naivete and determination, entered corporate America, where she was a member of a founding team that facilitated over 200 day-long sustainability workshops for the 1.2 million associates of Walmart stores. She's worked with a range of Fortune 1000 clients, and after a stint as the dean of the Chaplaincy Institute, Lauren now serves as the Climate Action Coordinator of the United Religions Initiative, focusing on what she'll be talking today about: Earth Restoration Cooperation Circles. Welcome, Lauren. It's lovely to have you here with us.
I think Lauren's video is off.
Thank you so much. And Bob, I'm seeing that it's saying that I can't start my video because the host has stopped it.
I can't imagine how that happened. Did that just change?
How about now? There I am.
There you are. There we are.
What a pleasure to be with you all today. Thank you for that incredible invocation, Penny. And I am a graduate of the University of Creation Spirituality / Naropa. So it is possible that some of us crossed paths, just like Penny and I have been doing for a while. It is always good to be with you. So I want to begin just by dedicating the merit of our time together today. Any goodness that comes from these conversations and from our shared time, I would really like to dedicate it to the ones in our world who today are looking for water, are looking for seeds. They may be two-legged like us. They may have four legs. They may be winged. But let's all of us endeavor to put any of the goodness and well-being that is generated in our time together today into the spaces where it is most needed. And with that, I'm going to share some slides to talk a little bit about the work that I am doing at the United Religions Initiative. But first, we must do a check-in. So as you feel inspired, I would love to see in the chat box, how are you feeling today? I am joining you from Ohlone territory, which is Richmond, California, in the East Bay of San Francisco. It has been raining, dramatically raining today. And when I look out the window, I think I kind of resemble 5. But I am also just genuinely happy to be here, and I have a big smile on my face, which is maybe a little more like 9. I don't know if we call that a smile or not. But anyway, just have some fun and share your, yes, I see another 5. Good, good. Gail's feeling giraffe-like. As you wish, put your number in there. And number 4 is, yeah, it's so sleepy. Understood. However you find yourself in this moment, welcome, welcome, welcome. This is a bow to all of our species, true kinship, and just a way to feel a little bit more connected through our Zoom boxes. So good to check in with all of you and your moods. All are welcome. So I serve right now as the Earth Restoration or Climate Action Coordinator for the United Religions Initiative. And in case URI is new for you, we are an interfaith organization. We are an international organization, and we support grassroots groups all around the world who are called cooperation circles. In order to form a cooperation circle, there need to be 3 or more traditions represented. And really, even tradition isn't quite the right word anymore. Indigenous lifeway is welcome. A spiritual community is welcome. Those who identify as agnostics or spiritual but not religious, all of those voices are welcome in a circle that may also include Muslims, Buddhists, Christians, however that is defined. But the importance is that there is cooperation across these beliefs. So 3 or more traditions in the circle. And these circles sometimes have 7 members, and in Sri Lanka, there's a cooperation circle that is 200,000 members. So they really can vary in size. And what I am most wanting to focus on with you all today is some of the really good news stories that are at work around the world. I think it's especially important that we're telling these stories in the spirit of Joanna Macy or David Corton, who remind us over and over again that this is a revolution that is not televised. It happens through word of mouth. It happens in proximity when we're sharing time and space together. And so it's so important that we continue to spread news of some of the really good things happening. This picture that you're looking at is really my attempt at creating sort of a theory of change of how I believe Earth restoration efforts end religiously motivated violence and create cultures of peace, justice, and healing, because that is really what URI is intending to do in the world. And I think that we do that first just by coming together and cooperating around an idea. And then by starting to act on that idea and realizing that, oh, when we are cooperating in this way, we create greater resilience in our community, which inevitably reduces our tendency toward conflict. And then from that space, because we are more resilient, we in fact are able to end ecocide, the harm that's happening to nature, but we also are able to find healing with and for each other in that process. So hopefully some of the stories that I share with you in this presentation today will confirm that this theory of change happening. um, the way that this work happens is sort of threefold. URI acknowledges that we are in a polycrisis, and we are doing our best to create educational tools so that other people are able to find access to information, especially if they're in a country where the polycrisis is not being discussed, ways that they can find the information that they're looking for. And then partnering with lots of organizations within the United Nations, but sometimes the United Nations itself, like we're very involved with the United Nations Environment Program, and then other partnerships. You'll hear a little bit more about that in a moment. And then maybe most importantly of all, being in ceremony together and praying together and honoring the rights of nature in the ways that we connect. And some of that happens in person, and lots of it now happens on Zoom. But we have more than 1,100 cooperation circles, we call them CCs, in over 100 countries, and at least a third of them are focused on ecosystem restoration or climate action of some kind. This fantastic piece of art was created by a member of one of our cooperation circles. And for anyone who doesn't know Spanish, it translates to be planting is a form of resistance. When we plant, we are resisting. So on the left here, and this is an example of one of the educational tools, and I am going to share a link to this guidebook with any of you who are interested. It focuses on ways to start ecosystem restoration where you live simply by having a conversation. All of these tools are really inviting people of faith, again, spiritual communities, indigenous perspectives, to be leaders in their communities, partnering with civil society, nonprofit organizations, but generating projects that bring greater restoration to the spaces where they're living. So this conversation guide is currently in English, and by the end of this month, it will also be available in Spanish and French. And we're hoping that by the summer, it will be available in Arabic. We also have a really cool thing. Some of you maybe have seen it. It was authored by WWF, but it is a tree growing guide for people of faith. We experienced for at least a decade lots of faith groups planting trees, often near the peace pole, like the May Peace Prevail on Earth pole that we see in so many spaces. There were lots of ceremonial tree plantings, but we found out that some of those trees that were planted didn't actually succeed. They weren't actually growing. And so WWF said, let's make sure that people in these spaces who are so well-intentioned are also able to successfully grow the tree. And so they've put together a tree growing guide for people of faith. And then the last thing I'll tell you about as an example of our tools is a monthly call called Gathering for Earth. And this call is pretty fun because people join from wherever they are in the world. So we just had a call on Tuesday, and there were people on the call from Afghanistan and Austria, Cameroon, India, Argentina. Really, it varies from month to month, but so many voices from around the world, everyone looking for ideas and doing their best to find ways to bring greater restoration and community peace building to the places where they call home. And then those two other parts of the three-pronged process I was telling you about is our partnerships. This photo that you're seeing is a group of us, the Faiths for Biodiversity Coalition. We were able to attend the UN COP15 that happened at the end of 2022. Lots of us know about the COP that just happened. We'll have COP 28 this year. That is the climate COP. It's very focused on fossil fuels. And we also probably know that there are aspects of that COP that feel, oh, like we're just at an impasse and it's kind of corrupt. I think that the biodiversity COP, which is this one, actually still has some merit. I think that there's still some ways that it is small enough that some good work is happening. And I was really glad that I was able to attend that COP in 2022. That COP is happening again, the COP 16 later this year. And even if you aren't able to travel to Colombia, there will be ways that you can participate online through live streaming events and that sort of thing. And then this last piece, honoring Earth as sacred, is what I was saying before about ceremonies and gatherings. I don't know if anyone on this call was at the Parliament of the World's Religions last summer. So Penny, Gail, I know you were, but there may have been others there. And there was a beautiful moment when Rosalia Gutierrez, who is one of our Cooperation Circle members who lives in Buenos Aires, an indigenous woman, she traveled to the Parliament and she did a Pachamama ceremony on the shores of Lake Michigan. Now, what was really powerful for her in this process is that because of the doctrine of discovery, because of the Manifest of Kings, Rosalia knew that at a place like the Parliament of World Religions, she might not feel very safe. There were all kinds of sort of ghosts in the closet for her. And so we can imagine that when she was met with nothing but curiosity and enthusiasm to participate in a Pachamama ceremony and to heal the earth, and she was joined by other indigenous members from around the world who were also at the Parliament, it was an incredibly profound moment. And just reminded me again of how ceremonies in all places and spaces are really incredible healing acts, and we should be looking to do them more often and as much as possible. So I was mentioning how I think that there's something about community resiliency that really does provide a certain potency in the face of the religiously motivated violence that we're seeing in so many places and spaces today. And it feels important to define a little bit more what I mean when I say this community-based thing. The last time that I was with you all to talk about deep adaptation, I was talking about how the word adaptation can mean a lot of different things, and resilience is also becoming quite a buzzword. So I just really want to stress that when I'm talking about community-based resilience, I am talking about the mystic and the prophet, to use Matthew Fox's language, right? It is so important that we are creating a form of resilience that is circular and not a ladder, that it is a collective act of creating strength and community decision-making processes and ways of being that are seeing intergeneration and all race and all gender and all species for that matter. So I want to give you some examples today of this community-based resilience that are happening across the URI network. The first form of resilience that probably comes to mind most easily is the ecological resilience work that's happening. And in some of these photos, you'll see cooperation circles who are doing everything from the folks who are in the left-hand corner around the water there. They have just given rights to the river in southern India. And the folks in the upper right are in Malawi, and they are doing an agroforestry project where they are, which is a really, really important sort of permaculture practice that is bringing trees very strategically into places that are mostly cropland, and vice versa, actually taking some native plants and planting them in the forest so that food security is happening in both spaces with the benefit of shade tree and nourishment for the soil. And it's good stuff. So lots and lots of work like that happening. The social and economic resilience is what we might think about with the circular economies, or even worker-owned co-ops, which there are a few of across the network. If you drink fair trade coffee that is from Peace Cowamera, you are supporting a cooperation circle, for example. But then also even just trying to be more climate adaptive in a socially just way by organizing microgrids. Maybe a mosque and a church come together for a solar installation that then actually provides energy for that community. In the lower right-hand corner, there are a group of folks in Arizona who are doing their best to provide cooling centers and supplies for people who do not have homes and are in many, many days of 100-degree heat. So it's all of those sorts of things, socially and economically. How are we becoming more resilient and taking care of one another? And then in the community resilience space, I would say this is more for those in socially economic privileged spaces. Certainly in the Western world, there is a lot of relinquishing and divesting that we need to do. And so this is a space where many cooperation circles who are located in Europe, in the United States, in Australia, are doing fantastic things with their banks. They're partnering with Third Act and Bill McKibben, but they're looking for more ways of holding our corporate powers responsible and trying to foster change there. So I just told you the great story of Rosalia. She is in the upper right-hand corner. And in the cultural resilience and adaptation space, we are really partnering with cooperation circles to amplify what they're already doing. So they're protecting their medicinal plants. They are preserving their native languages. They are trying to bring advocacy for the indigenous voice into the urban planning in the city nearby. So URI is not doing this work, the cooperation circle is, but we are continuing to promote their efforts and amplify those voices. This is the last couple of slides before I do want to show a short video clip of the CCs more in action. And it goes back to what I was talking about with the biodiversity COP, the Council of Parties that happened with the United Nations in 2022, and it will reconvene in October of this year. But this biodiversity COP passed a global biodiversity framework, and maybe some of you heard about that. It is incredibly important. It is not yet sufficient, and it is a huge win still if we think about the responsibility that we all hold as two-leggeds to care for the world and the interdependent nature of our current moment. So by 2030, the Global Biodiversity Framework says that we will have protected 30% of our lands and our oceans, our wetlands, and we will have reduced 500 billion annual harmful government subsidies. That's a really, really tough one. We'll have cut our food waste in half, and we'll have explored a number of different targets. I will not go through all of these, but the beauty of these particular targets is that there's a group of us now who are saying, all of these targets that you're seeing on the screen right now are things that many faith groups and spiritual communities are already doing. They're already embodying this work. They're already teaching this work. They're spreading this awareness. Some of them are ashrams. Some of them are eco-villages. Some of them are universities where they have nature-based programs. Some of them are the indigenous groups that I mentioned a moment ago. But these are places where biodiversity is already prioritized. And so what are the ways that we can continue to make this contagious in a really good way? And just as an example to kind of highlight a couple of these targets, I wanted to focus on a few of my favorite cooperation circles of late. This is the Nasakuri CC. They are in Uganda. Elizabeth Barungi is in the center there. She is an Indigenous woman who knew as a young child that she had other ways of knowing. She was hearing and receiving information from the Supreme Being, she refers to it as, and that she was experiencing quite a bit of prejudice and bias in her schools and in the town where she lived. And it became really important to her to kind of get re-embedded in a more Indigenous space as an Indigenous woman. And now she and others have created a demonstration site where Indigenous teachings, traditional land care and tenure are being upheld. And it's being shared with the Protestant pastors, the Catholic priests, the imams, as well as the government leaders and the university professors. So it's quite something. She's still, like so many of these kinds of efforts, looking for funding. And it's slow going, but she's doing phenomenal work. And I'm just really excited by the kinds of things that Nasakuri CC is doing. Another example is the Boho Goodwill Volunteers. They are in the Philippines. And this group, also an interfaith cooperation circle, is really doing a lot in response to climate disasters. So you can imagine in the Philippines, their coastline is subject to all kinds of cyclones and landslides. And this group is diligently coming in and doing mangrove restoration. They're growing trees. They're caring for the coastline, all of the stuff that gets washed up in a storm. They're recycling it and cleaning. So just examples of some really, I think, noble efforts and good work happening in cooperation circles around the world. Yeah, I'm going to pause just in case there are any questions about what I've shared so far, and then I will share a video so that you can see a little bit more of the different regions and what's happening there.
If you have a question, please check the reactions button on your toolbar and click on the words raise hand.
Craig, I
Yes,
see you.
Craig, go ahead.
Thanks. You mentioned in one of your slides climate science and faith curriculum. Is that something that's in development or is it already available?
You know, there is not a URI branded climate science and faith curriculum, but some of our CCs have created them. And I'm thinking about a few in India that I think are fairly good. If you would like to share your contact information, I'd be happy to see
Great.
what I can find out. Yeah,
That's great. Thank you.
sure. Anyone else? Well, why don't I share the video and then we'll see how folks feel after that. I will say that this video has some pretty catchy music. And so if you feel like you just need to get up and dance, it's welcome. This is Arts for Awakening, so don't hold back. There you go, Penny. I see you. I'm going to be right there with you in a second. Hold on. You have to tell me if you don't hear the sound. Do you hear it? No?
Sound yet.
Need to make sure you click the share sound when you're selecting the video.
Yeah. It didn't give me that option. Let me just try one more time. There it is. Okay, here we go. So that's a peek at some of the things cooperation circles are doing in different regions around the world. I think that what feels most important to me as I think about this noosphere idea is that always there can be such a gap between what a dominant system is saying is possible and what the ones on the ground in a community are experiencing as true and real. And then in between those 2 points, there is activism and compassion. And there's also what some of you know I call reverence. It is prayer. It is love. It is these invisible ways of being that Gail brought in the introduction. We're all here because we believe so much in it. And so there's what we are doing with our hands and our feet that's so important. We keep doing it. And there's also what we are doing with our heart and our consciousness that is really important as a way of keeping ourselves sane and realistic, but also to connect with one another and to remind ourselves that we don't actually know how this story ends. That we are part of something that is 13.8 billion years, maybe. And that it's going to go on beyond our species, right, in some form, and that in our awe and wonder with that and our commitment to it, that there is much afoot that can't be measured. And so it's in that spirit that it feels really important to me at least, to continue to be in relationship with and surrendering to simultaneously. And I would love, love, love to have any kind of conversation that you all would like to have now around how community-based resilience or interfaith cooperation or holding species who don't look like you and I in reverence, how we can grow that more. And before we end today, I would love to jointly read a blessing that I created, but we have time now for some conversation and dialogue together.
Lauren, let me ask this. How are people coming to something like the Parliament and getting inspired and then going home to their communities? Or how do you outreach to these outlying areas?
Good. Yes. To become a cooperation circle, the group comes together, these 3 or more people, and they fill out an application. It's kind of an appreciative interview process. And then they meet with members of the URI regional coordinating team and become a cooperation circle. Usually they're hearing about this through a neighboring cooperation circle. So it really is kind of through word of mouth. We have some cooperation circles who we're not very connected with on Zoom because they're in really remote areas. And we sort of hear about them from time to time because the regional coordinator in the Great Lakes region of Africa travels to be with that cooperation circle and to check in on them. Then there are other cooperation circles who are incredibly plugged in and they're using Zoom every day and we hear from them a lot. So it varies.
Which part of the globe seems most receptive at this moment in time?
So the Latin America and Caribbean region, or what we would maybe call Central and South America, some of us, that area is very engaged. And because they are Spanish speaking centered, we don't always hear from them as much, but they are very much involved in their region of the world. I think the places where we see the most cooperation circle cooperation with other cooperation circles is between Africa and India. And there are not cooperation circles in every country of Africa, but there are many. In fact, I think I just heard this morning that Mali has its first cooperation circle. So across Africa and with India, there's a lot of conversation and collaboration between cooperation circles. And that's when it starts getting into that like goosebump space of kind of the zeitgeist of, you know, how did you all hear about each other, and who else can we connect you with? Because now you're doing you know, greater collaborations together. So Africa and India, I would say, are the ones who are most engaged.
Wow.
Hmm.
Go ahead.
Sorry, related to that, there's a question in the chat box about within the U.S., specifically asking about Maryland and the D.C. area. Are there circles active in North America?
I know that there are several in DC, I think connected to the United Nations, actually. And again, if anyone wants some follow-up, just please make sure that you're leaving your information in the chat, or actually I can put my email in the chat. There we go. We'll do it that way, so that you can send me a message if you would like. I think that we experience fewer cooperation circles in the United States because there are many nonprofit organizations and interfaith opportunities in this country for people to be involved with. I also think some of you maybe feel like you're participating in the nonprofit industrial complex. It is really, really an intense space to be in. And so I think the URI song is not as loud in this country as it is in other places. But there are some cooperation circles on the East Coast. Interfaith Power and Light is a cooperation circle if you play with them. So that sort of thing. Yeah. Gail, I see your hand up.
Gail.
Well, I just wonder how, so, okay, let's just take it this way. I live in Boston, so if I would like to get involved with a cooperation circle, do I call you up? What do I do? Do I find a church or find a community? How would we go about it?
Yes. So let's just say, Gail, that you reach out to me, and then I contact Maria, who is the grand connector of cooperation circles. And I say, Maria, Gail's in Boston. Who do we know there? If she says, we don't have a cooperation circle in Boston, what is Gail interested in? Well, Gail wants to do things for faith and science. So then Maria would find the closest topic-based cooperation circle and connect you that way. It's also possible to be an individual member at URI. And so in the video, actually, you saw Grace Chalongo in Malawi. She's doing incredible nature-based education, and she's an individual member. And Dhruv Bhatt is also in Assam, India. And Dhruv does all kinds of education. Dhruv is 17 years old and an individual member. So that sort of thing is a really great way to start to tap into the network as well.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, Pat.
Yeah, I would just add to that, that one way you could do it as an individual, it could just join every month on Gathering for Earth that Lauren holds, and you can kind of get connected that way, and particularly with people from all around the world. And before you know it, you'll find people locally to connect with. But at least that's a regular monthly ongoing way to connect. So I just suggest that for you.
Pat, you've been in those Gathering for Earth calls, and you are somebody who has done a good amount of work on the ground here in the Bay Area. Is there anything else that you want to say about the Gathering for Earth calls that's helpful? I don't mean to put you on the spot. You don't have to. Just
Well, I'm still always wondering what is the people, because I know I'm involved with the Project Adapt and we're an interfaith council. But pretty much, in terms of actually getting my hands dirty and doing stuff on the land, I've joined some restoration projects that I haven't initiated myself, but on our watershed, in a municipal watershed, a municipal water district land. And although I've tried to establish something for Earth Day for honoring the people heard of a tree. Matter of fact, now that I've got a few minutes here I'm talking to everybody, one of the things that concerns me, and maybe I'm in a either or instead of a both and, but I was taken with some of the examples you showed about on your Earth Day brief video. And I know we have an Earth Day coming up here. There's a big event going on in Mill Valley, I think. And there's a lot of partying and playing games and doing things like that. And there's a lot of tables for electric cars and solar and all that kind of stuff. But I'm just wondering if, and I kind of have not been connected with it because that's what I see. I don't see the reverence for honoring the earth on Earth Day, that there should be a celebration for Earth in some way, some kind of participating ritual. And maybe that's what I was trying to do with the Dominican University on their site, of finding a tree and getting involved, getting the Miwok Council, the local indigenous people, the descendants of here, to do the ritual, to teach us,
I
So
think
I don't know, am I being either or here or?
no. This is great, Pat. I'm gonna take it and run with it. Is that okay?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
So I think that what we can see happening, especially in this country, maybe less so in some parts of the world, but there is such a tendency for capitalism to co-opt things that began as a very reverent act. Just this morning on NPR, there was a story about how people who have Airbnbs that are located in what will be the path of totality for the eclipse are bringing in telescopes and glow-in-the-dark stars and all of these different things for the people who are staying there, right? And I'm thinking, gosh, this is an eclipse. For the people who are able to be in that space to experience what happens when the sun and the moon do this dance that happens every 20 years, maybe, right? I mean, it's so awesome. It's so reverent. So let's all of us, as we are, feeling the arrival of these dates, let's look for ways that we can return to reverence, that we can kind of point to, okay, that's the loud, noisy system doing what it does. And we are coming back to this space of right-sizing ourselves and feeling the awe and the wonder of this moment and having ceremony that reflects that.
As always, thank you, Lauren.
Thank you, Pat. Thank you.
Lauren, there's also a question in the chat from Craig. Are there stories you can share of healing between wisdom traditions as they seek healing for the earth? You briefly mentioned the relationships built between Indigenous and Christian practitioners in Uganda.
Yes. Yeah. And then there was the Yaku Yura CC in Argentina that has done some really profound tree planting work, bringing together Christians and Indigenous in the name of kind of reparation. So no finances exchanged, but definitely some mending and repair work that is happening between, let's just say, like the colonizers and the colonized. And that has been really profound in Argentina. Right now, there are some cooperation circles that are doing some very careful listening work in Israel-Palestine. Now, historically, some of these cooperation circles have done things like tending mutually shared olive groves and things like that. That is not happening right now. But the Eco Peace CC that was also mentioned in the video is based in Jordan, and they routinely bring together people of the Jewish faith, the Muslim faith, and the Christian faith to do water protection and river restoration work. And in fact, they've been so effective at what they're doing in Jordan that there are people who are trying to do similar work in the Colorado River of this country. And Eco Peace has been called upon as sort of a guide. We have, farmers and ranchers who get in disputes around the Colorado River. We have cities that, are highly in lots of contestation around that river. So how can we bring peace building practices to all of that? And we know that stuff is going to intensify. It's only going to get harder. So I really love the work of Eco Peace, and they are a very formidable nonprofit in their own right. You could look them up and see what they're doing. So those would be some examples. The one more that I'll share is Youth for Peace. So Youth for Peace was they're many of them on staff now at URI, but there were 3 young voices. I think all of them were around 12 and 13 years old when what was the former Yugoslavia was at war, right? And now we have Bosnia and Herzegovina. But these individuals were children in countries where there was war. And they started a cooperation circle called Youth for Peace that is still going today. And Youth for Peace does a lot of climate education work in the schools now. So bringing a lot of interfaith education and climate action work into the school system, and encouraging kids to ride their bikes and plant trees and kind of have that headspace more part of the scene, which in Bosnia, I'm told, is quite different. Like that's not really happening in Sarajevo and those spaces. So that's another great example of folks who have addressed conflict through acts of restoration.
Great, thank you, Lauren. I might point out there's a note in the chat from Richard, I'm sorry I don't see your last name, about Sacred Earth, Growing Beloved Community, a monthly video webcast. And he's listed in that note, an email address to Richard Page and Paloma Pavel. So that might be of interest to some. Gail, your video just cut off, but I know you have your hand up.
I do. Oops. Goodbye. That's what work.
Okay.
Bob, can we just say that we want to just honor Lauren, and what is happening here is so exciting. and how you have given us this pulse and weaving of the world in such a beautiful and imaginative um, and and heartful way, and how
Yeah.
happy we are to be here and to be linking with others who are here. We're just here to play, here to create together, and also bring in our own thread to the tapestry. Thank you.
I'm so glad you can be here, Paloma, and I love it that in your parentheses you haven't put she, her, or he, him, but he, kin, which is so like Robin Wall Kimmerer and the invitation for all of us to be. Yes, that's wonderful. So glad that you're here, and I am familiar with Sacred Earth. That's a fantastic way for people to hear from others around the world who are doing great work in this space. So thank you for plugging it. I want to go back to what I plugged in the chat box too. I mentioned in my presentation that I was going to share 3 resources with you all. So the first one in the chat box is that tree growing guide for people of faith from WWF. And then there is also the Earth Restoration Guide that I mentioned that will be translated very soon in other languages. And then the third thing is a growing database. We tend this database with the Forum on Religion and Ecology at Yale. And it is trying to create a formidable list of the great work that's happening around the world. It's kind of unfortunately still a well-kept secret. We don't have nearly enough on that database. So if you are aware of fantastic things happening where you are, please submit them so that we can get them captured there on the database. But those are three tools and resources to further your own efforts.
Right. I'm not seeing another hand up at this moment. Oh, and Leo Jacobi has also posted a link to Youth for Peace Bosnia, Faith for Earth initiative in Bosnia and Herzegovina.
That's so cool, Leo. I didn't know about that, and I'm excited to go and check it out.
That's great.
We have many cooperation circles who very much like EcoPeace I just mentioned, they are, well established, standalone in their own right. And then we have kind of these lone voices. We hear from them a lot in a space like the Gathering for Earth calls, where someone shows up and says, well, I'm in Cameroon, I have a community garden, I'm trying to teach kids how to grow food. And this is in a space that was previously a vacant lot, and a lot of people still think it's okay to throw their trash there, even though we're clearly trying to grow vegetables. And, I mean, it's an example, it's a snapshot of what is real in so many parts of the world, including Oakland, a stone's throw from me, or the Iron Triangle, where Chevron has a refinery, right? I mean, we know this. It can be so challenging. And then it's really good to be able to be connected across a network and to have other people say, oh, you know what, that was happening here in Kigali, and here's a way that we worked with that challenge, and maybe I can share some materials with you, and let's see what can grow from this. So it's, the value of a network, the power of a network.
Absolutely. There's a note from Craig Miller. Thanks for this. We're talking about beginning a CC here in Brandon, Manitoba, Canada.
Oh, great.
So, yeah.
Good.
I see Richard has his
And
has his
Paloma.
hand up, and he stepped away from the screen there. Did you want to speak up for him? Or there we go.
Yes, we're just so excited to be here and wondering, will this group continue, or is there a subgroup of this that is in the Bay Area that might want to continue? Um, we didn't want that part of our message to get lost. Like
Paloma,
when
are you speaking specifically to global kinship in the noosphere? Oh, good. So that's a question for Gail and Bob and Penny.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yes, we meet once a month, first Thursday of the month at 4 o'clock. And our guests are people, wonderful people like Lauren and others who are working and working for this kind of rising good that is getting connected around the world. It was predicted by Pierre Desjardins. Right now, it's popping up with all sorts of names now, but to kind of keep this conversation going in order to name it and appreciate it, because once you even look at it and say, oh, there it is, you increase its power, exponentially. So we have wonderful speakers and if you aren't on our list, I'll make sure you are.
Will be as a result of having been here today.
Yeah.
But if there's other addresses, Gail can take those down.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
Thank you.
will the chat, there's been some information given now on the chat for people. Will they be able to, we never quite pulled that off, but maybe we could do it this time and get the addresses from the chat out to people.
Right. Well, anyone while we're online here can open up the chat and copy that information out. Hopefully electronically. It's too long to write out, I guess, but copy it out to a Word document, perhaps. My email is also in there. If someone needs a piece out of the chat, you feel free to email me, and I'll extract it and get it back to you directly.
Okay. Thanks. Thank you. That's good.
I would be happy to share any of the links for the resources with you, Bob, so that it's easy to send them out to others if saving the chat is tricky.
No, I save the chat every month, and so I'll
Right.
have those. If there are additional you want to send out to me, that's fine too. Penny, yes, you have your hand up.
Yeah, couple questions. The first one being that I know there's a movement among scientists to move trees that are used to and adapted to warmer climates north. Are your circles beginning to work with that?
I don't know for sure if any are. And I love it that you're saying this, Penny, because we could and can. So is this the work that Connie Barlow's doing? Yeah, great.
And others?
Good. Can we talk some more after today?
Absolutely.
Okay. Yes, I would love to hear more about that. And I think that there are even some folks I'm connected with here who would be excited to put their hands on those tree people and help them.
Oh, wow. Exciting.
Yeah, that's awesome work. Very
The
good.
second question I had has to do more with your former work, but maybe as it relates today to what do you think in your global perspective of all the issues coming forth, and what are the strongest ones to stand for and the strongest ones to stand against?
Ooh. I sort of pointed to this a bit when I was talking about the work with the United Nations. So maybe you all feel the same way. I don't know. The United Nations, to me, is so noble and so pie in the sky. It's both. And so the ways that we kind of jump in that sandbox and work together, I am always kind of hearing a little bit in the back of my mind, like, is this actually doing anything? And so I think it's important to kind of honor the creative tension that is in that space. And in the ways that the climate conversation continues, and there is like a fossil fuel proliferation treating that I'm hoping many of us have signed. I think it's important to sign these things. And I don't know if, because we've all signed this document, it is actually going to get into the hands of the oil companies and change will happen. So we sign it with a prayer, we bless it, and then we go to the space where we feel like we really are making a difference. For me, this biodiversity space, this kinship space is where I feel like I am still doing something that matters. So I don't know that I'm going to be able to stop the proliferation of fossil fuels. I do know that I can tend the soil in my backyard. And I want other people to be tending the soil in their backyard. So I think, you know, there's important work for all of us in the top down, bottom up. And this bottom up space that I've really focused on a lot today with these cooperation circles. I think that I try a lot to set expectations in a realistic way, so that when I'm talking with this group in Cameroon that is just trying to grow vegetables and prevent that lot from becoming the community landfill, that they have some hope for why that work is important and that it matters. And that then when I'm talking with Australia and the incredible interfaith group there that has successfully stopped a measure that banks were going to fund for another coal plant. They successfully stopped it. That then we're telling that story and we're making sure that other groups around the world say, okay, if they did it, we can probably do it too. It's such a, there's so much creative tension here. And believe me, there are days where I think maybe I should just be a farmer. And I don't really think that that's the full-on solution, right? I think we need both. And because some of it is really hard, we need each other to cheer each other on. Did I answer your question, Penny? Did I get specific enough? Okay.
Thank you.
Oh, you're muted. You're muted.
Ben.
Let's go back to your Walmart work and what you learned from that. And if there are any specifics in terms of applying what to stand against in terms of that.
Yeah. So just some context here. I was working with the Walmart team in 2007. And so Al Gore's movie Inconvenient Truth had just come out, right? There was this incredible portal that we all got to walk through, and people were ready to have conversations about this. And it was so potent and it was so exciting. And some really, really good things happened in that moment around taking organic farming to scale, for example, or even looking at, Walmart is not, it's not unionized. And they were having really important conversations about healthcare for their associates and what that would mean. And so even though we didn't hit a home run on all of those things, we came around the campfire and we had really important conversations about it. And I think that that stuff matters a lot. I also don't shop at Walmart, and I really won't. And I think that it's important for me, at least, to continue to support farmers here because I can. No, if I was living in Nebraska where I grew up, I wouldn't be able to support the community supported agriculture box all year around. It would be frozen and snowy, but here I can, and so I do. So it's, you know, like finding these places where we can be potent and part of the web. We do it, and I think it continues to be on us to speak out against the things that are causing harm and not shaming the people who are working at Walmart because it is the only job in town. So, you know, finding ways to nuance this and really point to the system. The system is not just, the system is not caring for everyone. And as people, we're not shaming and blaming the people, because look at where that's gotten us.
I think a lot could be solved in this country if different political parties, one like red, blue, red, blue, red, blue, started to farm together or started to work on these. I mean, this is just a pipe dream, but as I hear you talk about people coming together of different minds and different thoughts and kind of religious beliefs, I just like to imagine that. Let's just imagine that for a second. How good that would be for people to begin to work together on a good thing.
And so, Gail, I think that really is what I'm hoping I've been able to impart a bit of today, this community-based resiliency idea, right? That when here I'll give you an example in Malawi. So in Malawi, the mayors are chiefs. There's still a very strong indigenous or traditional way of organizing the country. And so these chiefs are kind of the decision makers. They also may, in their own right, attend the church or the mosque, much like what has happened in this country with First Nations people. And so in Malawi, where riverbanks are eroding and trees have all been cut down to use for firewood, and now there is a drought, and ecologists and permaculturists will say, well, you don't have any trees. You've got to get trees in there in order for windbreaks and water to come back. And so what can we do to help people understand that they can't cook on open fire, and we need these trees? And so then it becomes this collaborative effort, and they're going into the mosques and providing education, and they're bringing the churchgoers into the farmer's field. And the farmers who initially said, I'm not going to plant trees in my field, but like, I've never had trees in this field, I can't do this. But then when they start seeing the benefits of, oh, well, it's a fruit-bearing tree, and now there's food security because this tree is actually growing food, then they actually went and stole the trees from a neighboring field. And then there was a whole other conversation that had to happen around, like, there'll be enough trees for everyone. You don't have to steal them. Like, we can actually create peace in this community, and everyone will have trees if you want them. And then Cyclone Freddy came in and it wiped out the nursery, and they had to start again. And they did. So this is what I'm talking about with community resilience. It's like one step forward, three steps back. We care a lot about this. The Torah tells us that we should. The Gospels tell us we should. The Quran tells us we should. The chief tells us we should. and together we're doing it.
That's a powerful story. Thank you. Thank you. I think, could we just take a minute to kind of let all this hang in before we just go off to other projects and not, and lose the thought? Yes?
I
What?
brought a blessing that I was wondering if we could all read together, a prayer as a way of kind of closing us out. Would that be welcome?
Yes.
Absolutely, of course, yeah.
Thank you. Yes.
So one way we might do this is, oh, I really don't want to start from beginning. Okay, let's see. Yes, I did it. Okay. One way we could do this, I alternated the text between sort of this white color and the orange color. And I wonder if, even if it's a little chaotic, if people would just be willing to unmute themselves and we could take turns reading white, orange, white, orange, white, orange. What do you think?
I think we can handle it.
I think that everyone will try to be polite and not say anything, and then an extrovert will unmute and chime in at the same time that an introvert does, and that's okay. We'll just go with it, okay? So this is a prayer for choosing the kingdom. Creator, God, Goddess, source of life, we call upon the brilliance of evolution, the miraculous force that inspires rocks to become breath.
Just as you have turned caterpillars into butterflies, grant us the courage to metamorphose.
Awaken in us
Awaken in us the clarity we need to relinquish the battle of wills and to evolve as kingdom now.
Yes.
Help us to recognize the actions of our short lives as integral and worthy within the billions of years past and the eons to come.
Cradle us
in
the cycle of life so that we might fearlessly embrace and honor, trust and grace the sacred processes that carry us through birth, death, compost, new life.
Excellent.
And finally, please fill us with a generosity like the sun's, so that our activism, practice, and simple existence might be imbued with sustenance and joy.
May earth and all creation still our new kinship and care today.
Amen.
Amen and blessed be.
Amen.
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 Thank you.
Big breath.
Amen.
Big.
Thank you so much. Really, thank you.
And big hug
Yeah.
for self and others.
Well,
Thank you
let's-
so much for the incredible work you all are doing. I know you are out there connecting in the Manosphere, and I'm so grateful.
I have a quick question. Are you related to Laurel Van Ham?
Who is that? Who's talking right now?
I'm asking you.
Marianne.
Yes.
Laurel Van Ham gave me life. That's my mom.
Yay! Yay!
Whoa.
I
So
can't
glad
believe
to
it.
have you both. Yay!
Where is she?
Oh, I'm thrilled. I'm thrilled that you brought her name into this circle today. Thanks, Marianne.
Thanks for
Thank you all.
Okay.
Wonderful.
Bless you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Lauren.
My pleasure. Oh, and there's my mom. I didn't even see you were here. You were the whole time.
I'm here.
That's great.